Well, hello everyone. How are you doing? Oh, and it looks like my counter is fixed. That is fantastic. Well, I am doing much better today. For those of you who've been following my personal struggles, I did have my ketamine treatment yesterday. So already my mood is improved. I find it miraculous. Um, you have any questions on that, you could always get with me at some point. But we've got a Get Ready with Me and various Liberty discussion today. I hope to be doing another show tonight. That's why I'm bothering to put on makeup now. And I'm hoping it's something you guys will be interested in. I've decided I'm going to start going through ballot access issues, not just for libertarians. I think that is an issue, and I want to make sure I have sound because I remember I had that problem before. So let me just check my sound levels. Yes. Okay. So I'm finding that not just libertarians want to know about this, normies, if we should say that way, not that they want to know, they don't even know that they should know. So I think going through ballot access news and various ballot access issues would be quite educational for everyone involved. So before we get started, I got the first clip up is Dave Smith. Sometimes I don't even remember what clips I have. I think this was something I disagreed with Dave Smith on. The new word I taught the people at the Mises Caucus, I said it will be an Irenic disagreement. It was surprising to me that that wasn't a typical word in most people's vocabularies. It's one that's used quite often in debate. You've probably heard of polemics. Well, there are also ironics. So there you go, a new word in your toolbox. But before we get to there, up here you can see is my Patreon. And I am asking you sincerely, if you like the work that I do and this extra time I put on, sometimes I sacrifice sleep to be able to do these things, please consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month, though you could do more and I won't complain. But it really does encourage me. And if you like this kind of libertarian commentary, please do. That's all I will say on that right now. Let's get started. And I guess I will learn what clip I put here a couple days ago once it starts. So let me see what I'm doing here. Here we go.
To me, I wish this is like probably my central message to the Libertarian Party. It's like, it's not just a matter of being radical or moderate. It's a matter of being radical on the most important issues. I don't know if you've seen this clip that it gets sent to me probably every single day. Everyone who sends it to me, by the way, I've seen.
Okay, I want to stop here for a second because I don't want to. My memory still isn't the greatest. And I'm putting on my makeup. I'm putting on my primer. As I say, you got to prime the paint before you put it on. I don't want to forget the comments I want to make. So I did a show before where I was disagreeing with Dave Smith on his position on immigration. And I had explained the principle of no particular orderism, which, just in brief, for those who haven't seen it, no particular orderism is that you can't centrally plan liberty, that you have to take whatever opportunities present themselves, even though it might not be the preferred order in which you would like to eliminate the state or bring forth liberty, because other ones simply aren't on the table. So you can't say, I would rather get rid of the welfare state before opening the borders. If the opportunity is open to open the borders, you open the borders and then you use that as pressure to bring down the welfare state. However, the way that relates to this is where he said it's not a matter of being radical or moderate. Well, I'm not so sure if those were the terms that he wanted to use. It's odd because radical is both a methodology and an ideology. Not all ideological radicals are methodological radicals. Some ideological radicals are methodological, tongue twister, pragmatists. The opposite of radical is moderate. You can't be both. So when he says it's not a matter of being radical or moderate, it's a matter of being radical on the most important issues. Does he mean then, he didn't say this, so I'm guessing, and I hope he would clarify this. Does he mean then that you should be moderate on the less important issues? That is what I'm taking what he is saying, and I would highly disagree. So we'll continue. I just wanted to bring that forward. If you're an ideological radical, you're an ideological radical consistently. Now, perhaps he means you should be both an ideological and methodological radical on the most important issues, and you can remain being an ideological radical and then a methodological moderate, but I do not think moderate is a methodology. Pragmatism is. And perhaps that's what he means. Sometimes you've got to be very, very, very precise in what you're saying. Now, he does give an example where we can infer some of these things. So that's where we will continue. And I want to invite the audience, please comment. I like these shows to be participatory. I don't have like a set game plan, and so there's no script to go off. In fact, the script is to go off script. So let's continue.
Already when they're trying to dunk on libertarians. But it's the thing about the debates at the LP in 2016 when it's the driver's license.
Yeah.
And it just, nothing makes libertarians look worse than that clip where it's like, hey, do you think we should have a driver's license? And everyone's like, what, what's next? A license to toast in my own damn toaster. And everyone's like, screw driver's licenses. And then Gary Johnson up there says, what is just the most reasonable thing? He goes, I don't know. I mean, maybe you should have to take a test or something before you drive a car. And everyone's like, boo, you suck. And
okay, I will make a confession here. I was one of the people saying, boo, you statist. You kind of get caught up in the moment. That's normally not how I am, but that was my first convention. And yes, I got caught up in the moment, and I was very, very frustrated with Gary because of the Nazi cakes. And I think that's what Dave is ignoring here, or perhaps he forgot, is the background context. The people were primed to be irritated with Gary Johnson. He was pimping Bill Weld, who a lot of people did not want. If they wanted Gary, they did not want the cowardly lion, Bill Weld. And he was still going through the whole Nazi cake thing, where people wanted to bake a Nazi cake and bring it to the convention. I mean, that is the background. So they were quite primed to yell at him. It would be misplaced frustration due to the Nazi cake thing, not necessarily the driver's license. And libertarian conventions are just rowdy. And I actually don't think that makes libertarians look terribly bad, because here's what's funny. It's libertarians who keep bringing these things up. The people who watch C-SPAN is like some crazy cat ladies and maybe one political wonk at your work. The general public wasn't even aware of any of that. We made them aware of it by consistently harping on it. 2016 is ancient history. Even the people who weren't libertarians that saw it in 2016 don't remember it. I'm surprised he didn't bring up Naked Dancing Man. I think that would have been a more appropriate example. And the normies don't even remember that. And that's seared into my mind. I don't think I will ever forget that. I think I need therapy because of that. And I do think we have a comment, but it's probably just a hello. Yes, Matthew Mears says from Jordan B. Peterson, be precise in your speech. I always try to be very, very precise. And I have to thank my parents for that. A lot of people wonder how I gained the precision and how I gained such a large vocabulary. And I will say it's because they put books in front of me from as far back as I can remember, and not always necessarily age-appropriate books. And I don't mean subject matter that would be inappropriate, though my parents weren't too strict on that either. But reading level, it didn't matter. My mom was a member of the Book of the Month Club, and I read all the crap she got in. So yeah, that really, and I had, I was reading Nancy Drew. I had the whole series, very, very easy. So, I want to pull up David Davis's comment here. And he said, no one wanted Bill Weld, but some people were probably thinking about bringing moderate Republicans to the party because of Trump. Perhaps. And it's incorrect to say nobody wanted Bill Weld. Actually, enough people wanted him that they voted for him, though not everyone that voted for him wanted him. Gary almost cried begging for Bill Weld. So I kind of blame Gary for Bill Weld. But there were people who came to convention that were on Bill Weld's campaign team. One of them is somebody that Dave Smith debated. Not going to mention any names. It was one of his first debates, so you can guess who that was very much stumping for Bill Weld and wrote for Bill Weld's blog called The Jack News after we already knew what a big fat liar he was. He didn't defect to the Republicans by then, but come on, we knew he was a liar. And I'll say it again, I'm the only one who got up there on the microphone and spoke out against Bill Weld. I tried to do it politely, but I did. Okay, let's continue.
Libertarians, can't we just realize this makes us look like assholes? Like, take a look at that. And by the way, no one even gave the correct answer, which is that, well, you could probably have a private company who would make sure that you're licensed on the roads. Whatever. That aside, it's like the correct answer, even from an anarcho-capitalist perspective, is like, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? Let's focus on what actually matters. Like, and that to me is, if the libertarians want to be taken seriously, that's what it's about. It's about focusing on the issues that are actually destroying our country and saying, hey, we are on the side of human liberty on all of these issues. And so for the party, no matter who ends up winning or what caucus gets their candidate.
Okay, I'm going to stop there for 1 second, even though there's only a couple seconds left. I couldn't disagree more. I do think you need to highlight the issues of the day, obviously. And you need to highlight the important issues. But change might not be ready on those issues, and by bringing them up, you're priming them for change later. Perhaps it's something you don't think is quite as important, but the opportunity to change it exists now. So let's say, just for example, there was a great opportunity to legalize polygamous marriage, which is something that the libertarians do support now, in the middle of COVID. But you could get that done. It would be a tremendous mistake to say, no, we can only focus on COVID and not this minor issue that few people care about. No, you do what can be done at the time it can be done without neglecting speaking out on the important issues. Plus, maybe it's just the radical individualist in me, but important to who, Dave? Maybe important to most people, but I don't get to say what's important to you. I don't know what's happened in your life or your priorities as to what's important to you. And I don't like not that Dave does this, but a lot of libertarians do, the concern trolling. When somebody is bringing up an issue they are passionate about, other libertarians go, don't we have more important things to focus on? You don't get to dictate other people's time. You go focus on those things instead of harassing the people. Is it a freedom issue? Is it a libertarian position? Then let people do what they want. I kind of view it the same way I do volunteers. Oftentimes affiliates have a mistake with volunteers. Like, let's just say they need somebody. I'm just going to pull something out my ass. We need somebody to do filing at the party office. And we have some volunteers, just a general roster. They didn't volunteer for that specifically. They just volunteered in general. But the person who volunteered hates filing. That's what you need, though. But this person is really good at something that you might consider tangential. Well, you might not know you need that thing that person is good at until they do it and you see how good it works. But when it comes to volunteers, you need to let them do what they love, or you won't have volunteers for very long. You can't put square pegs in round holes. And you better just let the filing go undone till you find the perfect volunteer, rather than trying to force that volunteer into a mold in which they don't fit. Let people find what they love and let it kill them. Same thing with issues. I don't tell people how to activist. I don't tell people the issues they are important about. They are concerned about is not important. I know plenty of people who had their kids seized by CPS, so that's all they care about. That's what they focus on. And really, they'll condemn, like, say, the vaccine passport idea, but that's not their main activism, and it's not my job to judge them for it. There was a guy in Florida for a while. I don't know why he had a wild hair up his ass for driver's licenses. But his name was Adrian Wiley. He used to be the chair of the Libertarian Party of Florida. Very interesting guy. I don't think he's in the party anymore. I hope he does come back. But he refused to get a driver's license. That was his thing, and he got arrested for it. And he got a lot of publicity for it. And I don't think the anarcho-capitalist answer is who cares? This is a nationwide ID right now. What do you mean, who cares? David Nolan, one of the founders of the party, certainly cared. He was getting really upset in an interview that, these things were sold to us just as to be something to show you could drive a car. And it's now become a life passport, hasn't it? What can you do without a driver's license? I know you can get a state ID, but most of the time it's because everyone else has driver's licenses. So who cares? Driver's licenses are actually a big deal. You need a license to move around in the modern way. And how do you think people are so accepting of the vaccine passports? What do you think we hear all the time? What are you so upset about having an ID for? You carry around a driver's license, don't you? One little thing that might not seem important leads down the road. We are now in real ID land, which is a national ID card. It is important. What do you mean, who cares? And he's right. Nobody gave the right libertarian answer, but I'm going to continue his clip and tell you why that was. But I want to see if anyone else here. And some people are saying they lost the signal, but signal's still going on my end. I think that's a Facebook issue. If you're on Facebook and the signal is weird, actually, it benefits me much more if you watch this on YouTube. I would really, really appreciate it. Okay, let's see here. Let me continue. Yeah, David Davis says, you can't get a job in some areas without a driver's license. Now, we're going to get into the voting thing, not today. I do have some clips I've saved on voting, but that will be a different get ready with me. So I don't want to, shoot my wad on that right now. Okay, so now let's continue here.
Or whatever. It's like if we all want to do something here, don't create another.
Wait, we all want to do something, but that something is a little vague. I know Dave says the most important issues are like the drug war, the overseas wars, and I agree with him. Those are extremely, extremely important issues. Some people don't really understand that nearly all of our loss of freedoms stems from the drug war. Like, it's almost like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. The drug war it has its tentacles and everything. But I don't get to tell people that they can't make they can't major on what I think is a minor. And the party, when it was most effective before 2001, didn't do that. They majored on everything. All freedom is important. And that kind of thinking, and I don't know Dave's view on things like the fair tax or consumption taxes. But now I just lost my train of thought here for a second. Oh, so people will say to that, well, the most important thing is that we reduce the tax load. This will reduce the tax load right now, even though, say, both of those, well, the fair tax, let's just deal with the fair tax, actually doesn't decrease government. It may decrease taxation. It may eliminate the IRS, but it then inserts the government as a third party in every single commercial transaction you do, or almost every single commercial transaction you do. So it actually expands the government. But people will say, that little bit of freedom is worth those people giving up so I can have less taxes. Well, you don't get to play dice with other people's freedom. You don't have the right to do that. You don't have the right to exchange a little bit of aggression to one person because you think it will relieve you in some way. So no, I fundamentally, absolutely disagree with him here. And I would really like to have a discussion with him on this.
Moment like that. How about don't ask the candidates that question at our debates?
Okay. Why didn't people give the right answer, and why was that question even asked to begin with? I disagree with the way they set up that debate. Let me be honest with you. I hate most debates to begin with anyway. I come from a debate background. I owned a theology debate forum for about a decade. It was one of the largest Christian theology debate forums on the internet, Theology Web, in case you want to go check it out. I don't own it anymore. When I decided I didn't want to do that anymore, I just gave it to some of my friends who were passionate about it. And the funny thing is, I never debated politics there. I hated it, hated that portion. But I've seen like actual debates where people actually change minds and you learn something. And most political debates are not that. Debates are not having pre-prepared. I know it's a type of debate, but for me, a real debate is not having a list of questions that some moderator asks that are pre-prepared and everyone gets 2 minutes to do it and then you move on. That's not a debate to me. If you watch some debates by a theologian named James White, that dude is a badass debater. And that is structured in a much different way where you have opening statements, closing statements, rebuttals, but and there's no pre-prepared questions. The most important part, though, is they have what's called cross-examination, where before closing statements, or is it after? It can be after, but usually before closing statements, each side gets to cross-examine each other in a certain like 2-minute time limits. And the other person doesn't get to ask questions that time. They just have to answer. And that's where you pin them down where they were squirrely in their presentation. And you don't learn anything till you get to the cross-examination. That's where you learn which case is actually strong. And there's a proverb on that says, one man seems right until another argues his case. And you don't really argue until you have cross-examination. That's why our legal system has cross-examination. So those debates are useless. But so that's why the answer wasn't given. The time frames, it's just not set up to give answers. Now, why was that question asked to begin with? Well, there shouldn't have been questions, as I say. But that moderator was a Republican moderator who really did not, focused on the more sensationalistic aspects of libertarianism and wasn't there to focus it on ways that to make our candidates shine. And I don't mean that like in a prejudicial way, like trying to salt the soup. But this was all libertarian candidates at a libertarian convention. It wasn't set up in a way for us to choose our best candidate. It was a zoo. And that's another reason why you had people yelling statist and getting up and hooting and hollering. And that debate was at the beginning of an LP convention where you guys are going to like this, full of piss and vinegar. Okay, I want to put Daniel's, a couple quotes up here. Okay, Matthew Mears says, I don't think Dave is telling people they can't be passionate on seemingly smaller issues. It seems like he's driving an argument on focus on the biggest things first. Let me disagree with you there. And in fact, no, not really disagree. You stated my objection. I think perhaps you're misunderstanding me. Why does anyone get to tell anyone what issues they have to focus on first? When you're passionate about smaller issues, those are your first issues. That's what being passionate about them means. So I think, Matthew, with all due respect, part one of your statement contradicted part two. And that's my objection. Let me continue. Jason said he thinks Dave would agree with me. I don't think so, but I would love to speak with him about this. I especially would like clarity on the terminology he's using with radical and moderate and methodology and ideology. Let me be clear. I'm an ideological radical, which you guys know, but I'm also a methodological radical. I'm finding that I'm more radical than most radicals, which kind of surprises me. Okay, so Daniel says, if something impacts you in a way that you lose your life, you lose all other freedoms forever. That's the logical way to prioritize relative importance of freedoms. I don't believe in a hierarchy of freedoms. And you don't get to infringe upon someone else's freedom in order to save your life. You don't get to do that. That's why Good Samaritan laws are not libertarian. You don't get to force somebody into rendering aid to somebody because they'll die, because you're infringing on that other. There's no such thing as positive rights. When you prioritize freedoms, you you are creating positive rights, and there are no positive rights. The only obligation I have to your life is non-interference and non-aggression. And it's almost like, and I use the same argument, and I keep saying I'm going to do this show about Georgism. If you don't know what Georgism is, it's, what's the other word for it? Crap. Geolibertarianism. I make the same argument about how, let me just give, I know this is a shallow summary. Any Georgists in the audience, don't come for me. But it's basically like saying the earth belongs to everybody. You can't own the earth, but you can get exclusive use of land. It's all about land. And in order to get exclusive use of the land, you have to pay a fee to society. Well, what if in society, if we all own the land equally, what if I would rather have the land rather than the fee that person's paying? You don't get to tell me what my rights are worth to me. And Daniel has said that Good Samaritan laws don't force people to help, as far as I know. Don't they? They force them to help or pay fines or go to jail or whatever it is. That's compulsion. Good Samaritan laws are compulsion. You help or you lose your freedom. It's almost like Jordan Peterson said, when people would shallowly say the Canadian laws aren't forcing you to use pronouns. He goes, well, what happens if I refuse? And it all comes down to that. It's the same thing with all laws are ultimately enforced at the point of a gun, aren't they? If you don't wish to comply. Well, we're referring to different Good Samaritan laws then, Daniel. I may be imprecise. So let me call them something else, because everyone's correcting me. And I would be more than happy to concede if I am the only type of Good Samaritan law I'm familiar with, and I'll put these comments up, is this type that says you have a duty to render aid. So let's not call it that. Let's just say if you want to prioritize, let's go back to the example of prioritizing life over other freedoms, then why wouldn't you want to force someone to render aid if the imposition on their freedom is slight and the other person would die? And let me just put this up here because I love when people correct me. Good Samaritan laws generally protect those who act in good faith to help from legal liability. Funny, and I work in law, but I don't work in that kind of law. I never heard of that. So thank you. Thank you very much for the education. I misunderstood, I think. So thank you. Yeah, I was thinking there were some laws like that, and I thought it was a maritime law. Daniel pointed up that would be true in maritime law, failure to render aid to a vessel in distress. I don't think that's libertarian. I think it's moral. I think you should always help people if you can. And particularly if it's not at great loss to you. You don't have to risk your life for other people, but listen, if it's nothing for you to give somebody money to keep them from starving, you should, but you can't be forced to. Okay. That's it for Dave Smith. I would appreciate it Dave sometimes watches my show, I know. Maybe we could have a discussion on this. I would love it. It's an issue that I do talk about quite a bit.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business, not because they wanna